Let's talk about the highlight reel of where you started in business and where you are now.
Yeah, man. So I started in business. I was right out of college. And at that point, I got a corporate job in healthcare consulting because I went to school for computer science and biology. So I was an engineer by all intents and purposes and got a corporate job. It was my dream corporate job in healthcare consulting. And then I remember like 2 months into that job, just laying in bed at night and feeling empty, just feeling like I could do so much more. Like when you're hyper ambitious and you're driven and you're hardworking and you're talented, you just have that voice inside of you that drives you. So for me, that's what it was. And that was in September of 2017. So at that time, I'd already taken care of my own health. I went from being a fat kid to having six pack abs and winning fitness competitions just as a complete hobby, like with no goal of becoming a trainer or no goal of building a business around it. So then, yeah, like got into a business mentorship because I didn't understand anything about the business side of things. And then
Who's
rest
your
is history.
mentor?
At that time, it was a guy named Sterling Griffin. He was pretty much the OG for a lot of the business coaches, like even now. He started it and then I think he ended up pivoting and got into real estate. But yeah, so I was with him in the early days and yeah, man, had to learn all the lessons the hard way. And then over time built a pretty successful online fitness coaching business. And I think what I'm most proud of at Training with the Titans, which is my company, is it's not that we've been successful, it's just that we've been successful for a long time, which is great. And the ability to sustain a business like that is very hard. So I remember back in Sterling's program, there was 300 of us that got into it with that batch. And Nick, if you had to guess, how many do you think are still doing it
Out
out of
of
the 300?
300, I'd guess 15.
Um,
Wow.
I know three people three of us that are still in the game. So, and actually, I'm hanging out with those people in 2 weeks here in Austin, Texas. But the point I'm making is, yeah, like in the industry where people die young and just businesses die young, we've been able to sustain our business for the last 6.5, coming to a 7 year mark soon. And yeah, man, transformed over 900 clients, like directly work with them. And now I have started off as a solo business where it was just me doing everything and then the last 2.5 years built a small team. So I have now assistant coaches and then other people doing the marketing stuff. And so at the end of the day, I get to be the leader, the CEO and heading the ship. So I'm very proud of that.
What's the hardest thing about leading a team?
It's a very profound question. The hardest thing.
I'm sure there's a bunch.
I think the biggest one that comes to mind is knowing when it's a training issue and when it's that person just cannot do this job.
Okay.
Like knowing when to let go and terminate that position and knowing when to put extra effort into that position and really train that person more. That's always the toughest because sometimes you put somebody in a position that they applied for and they really wanted and they're great, but then they're not meeting KPIs. They're not hitting that requirement for that job, but they're a great person. They're a very nice person. So then you have to make a decision whether to let that person go or pour more energy into them and train them. So I think leadership as a whole, that often tends to be the hardest decision to make. And oftentimes I found that most of the time it's a training issue or it's a reinforcement issue. Like people just haven't been trained. So like in the early days of being a leader, I was always like above average at all of those things that I did. And I think that's why we were able to sustain that growth. But what happened was when I brought on a team, there were times when like they were struggling and I would have the urge to be like, I'll just do it. I'll just jump back in and do it. I can do better, right? And then now in the last year or so, I've not done that at all. So like somebody messes up, it's their fault. They take ownership for it instead of me coming to save them all the time. So it's like, okay. And I had to learn that. So because if you just want your team to keep relying on you, then you enable them, right? By like, hey, I'll be there when you need me, right? And I'll come save you. But in reality, the way to make somebody extra competent at that work is be like, this is your shit. Like you're responsible for these things. And if you ever need me, I'll be there. But at the end of the day, I won't be jumping in to save you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I think there's a pretty good balance between being there for someone and micromanaging. Because I worked for a social media company and basically everything that I was doing was monitored, and you always feel like you're walking on eggshells. So
Yeah.
it's important to be able to develop a team that you can trust to do what you're paying them to do and not
Yeah,
always being there.
that in my opinion, so in the first 2 weeks of the job, obviously train them, micromanage them a little bit. But in my opinion, no high performer wants to be micromanaged, and no high performer wants to feel like they're walking on glass. Like if if I'm in a team where I feel like I am walking on eggshells with my leader, I'm not going to be contributing my best at all. I'll be worried. The only thing I'm worried about is saving my job. And that's not where creativity lies. That's not where you innovate. That's not where you improve at all. So I think as leaders, we have to be extra careful not to put our employees at that spot. The goal is to like make them feel secure enough at that job. But it's so counterintuitive because like in the social media marketing agency world or the coaching world, people hire and fire like crazy. And it's
Yeah.
just immaturity at the end of the day because most of these people have never been trained in good leadership. But hiring and firing has consequences.
It's kind of dehumanizing. You're just treating people as if they're just a number. And a lot of people think I've been reading a lot of John Maxwell, and he talks about the level one of leadership is having a position or a title. And a lot of people think they're good leaders just because they have that title of founder or CEO when they
Yeah.
could be really shitty at leading people.
It's fascinating, bro, because like if you go around and like you go to a supermarket or in the mall near you and you interview people and you're like, hey, are you good at computer programming? A lot of people will say, no, I'm not. No, I'm not good at it. You ask people, hey, are you good at sales? A lot of people will say, no, I'm not good at sales. But if you ask almost everybody, hey, are you good at leadership? Everybody says they're good at leadership. Everybody, right? It's almost like people assume that you're born with it. You're born with those qualities. And it's the furthest from the truth because that's not how, like, leadership is a skill that has to be learned, just like computer programming, coding, learning sales, marketing, all of that. But leadership, for some reason, people think like everybody's good at it.
Yeah.
It's not true.
You constantly have to work on it and develop it.
And you have to have like a very high level of self-awareness. You have to know when you're getting frustrated because as you lead a team, the bigger the team gets, the less control you have in a funny way, right? Because now you're delegating. And at times you're going to be frustrated because things aren't getting done the way that you did them or that you wanted them done. But in those moments, you have to have self-awareness to pause a little bit and be like, okay, if I yell at Nick right now, what benefit does this have? Nothing. Versus if I communicate with him that, hey, next time you do this, please do it this way, and I'll send you a training on how I used to do it. That way it'll be done more effectively and save you time. Now Nick is actually getting trained, and in the future, you'll have a better product. So at the end of the day, like self-awareness is a huge part of leadership. And I think that's often not talked about.
Yeah. The founder of Southwest always talked about his philosophy is when you treat your employees really good, then they're going to end up treating the customers really well and you're going to succeed in business. So it's treating people like they're humans and not just numbers. And when you're angry, just taking a second to step back and really calm down, sit with your emotions, and then talking to someone in a more calm, understanding way. Because people are going to
100%.
be more receptive to that.
100%. Yeah. And like imagine if the roles were reversed. Like everybody would want that. Everybody would want to be treated with respect and everybody would want a leader that's more self-aware, self-regulated, their emotions are in control, etc. Nobody wants to work for an emotional wreck.
Yeah.
You can teach them, you can put them through every leadership training in the world, but if they're like emotionally not there, they're gonna struggle as a leader big time.
Yep. How have you developed yourself as a leader over the years?
By having great mentors and just I've been very fortunate that I've always had great leaders that I worked under. And it's like a buffet. You look at people, you look at leaders that you worked at, jobs I've had, and I take notes if I ever did something that wasn't, up to standard and the leader had to give me feedback. I always like made note of how they gave me feedback and how it made me feel so I can improve my for myself. So like having great mentors in life I would take note of that. I'm like, oh, he gave me that feedback he gave me. Like, I should communicate that way too, because it was very well received. Right. And same thing when I was in corporate America and healthcare consulting, even before in the hospital world. I think I've read a lot of books too, But what really helped me become a better leader was just working with great leaders and learning from them. And oftentimes I think the biggest misconception in leadership is that people think like I can't work for other people, like jobs don't. I've had jobs in my life, and I think I've learned a lot from those jobs. And you can learn a lot from anything you do. So I think to develop as a leader for me came out of just watching other great leaders. And there were some people that were just horrible leaders. And I also took notes from them. I was like, yeah, that's not what I want to do.
Yeah, don't
And
do that.
I don't want to be an emotionally like unstable person. I don't want to be yelling at my team. I don't want my team to feel insecure. Yeah, these are like the basics, but they're very hard to execute on, right? Like everybody on your team should know where they stand with you. Are you happy with their work or are you not? Have you been giving them feedback? Have you been reviewing their work? Right? Like all of those things. And it's far from micromanaging, but at the same time, if things start breaking and you start overreacting, then that's also not very productive. It's like having a nice balance of it all. I mean, a great book on that is The Dichotomy of Leadership by Jocko. He talks about like you should be nice to your employees, but you can't be too nice. You should be friendly to your employees, but you can't be too friendly, right? Like there's all these dichotomies in leadership that Jocko like elaborates on super eloquently. So yeah.
What other books have you read about the topic?
I think John Maxwell's work is good on leadership specifically. I think even not a book doesn't come to mind besides the dichotomy of leadership and the John Maxwell's work, but there was a really nice Hormozy quote that he posted like, I don't know, a year ago, 2 years ago. And it basically said people that struggle in employment struggle for like one of three reasons. Either they don't know what to do, either they don't know the why behind it, like why are we doing it, or they don't know how to do it. So oftentimes, like as a leader, if your team is underperforming, they're not hitting KPIs, it's one of those three reasons, right? So it's like what to do. Do they know what to do? Do they know how to do it? And do they know the why behind why we do it? Because then they'll be more motivated. If it's none of those three, then fire that person. Then it's likely they're not a fit for the job and they're just lazy or whatever. But most of the time I notice I just follow that framework with what, how, why. If I can communicate that with my team, most people are good. Like 99% of the time, it has been good. Because what I found out was like I thought I had trained them and they weren't trained properly yet. They had no idea. I was assuming a lot, right? And especially in the social media world, like almost every person has social media marketing as a skill on LinkedIn.
Yep.
They, they would lie on their resume, right? But that doesn't mean they understand it. So sometimes you might have to train people more.
Yeah, that's like those people on Instagram that say social media expert and they have like 100 views on each video.
Yeah, it sucks.
How many people do you have on your team?
Five of us right now. Yeah, it's good. And I had to learn to delegate. I had to learn to actually like communicate how I wanted something done or how the business needed it done.
Yeah.
That's been a key skill too, like just communicating that. Like now when I message one of my team members on Slack, like something needs to get done, it's like, okay, hey, this is what I would like to get done. This is why we do this. And here's how I do it. And this is an example of how I've done it. Like just look at the live example. And if you have any questions, let me know, or like give me your thoughts. And I notice the more I can communicate like that, the less chance of things getting messed up, the more chance of them coming out properly. And I noticed that with certain things. Like at times, because I love taking action and I move pretty fast. And what I noticed is I can get a lot done, but then how do I delegate that to my team? And then everything I do, generally there's a process behind it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can just do that. I can just literally record a quick Loom training on it, and then the team would know exactly how I do it, and then they'll be able to do it forever and ever, right?
Yep.
So, I think that's the answer to your question there.
It's definitely not easy to want to give up that control because a lot of the time we get into entrepreneurship because we want to do our thing and do it our way. So when you hire people to do a task, like a lot of people would say, it's easier just to do it myself rather than
Which
hiring
is
people.
so
But
funny, yeah. And I feel like everybody faces that, and I don't think it ever goes away as an entrepreneur, even if you're a business owner with a lot of employees, hundreds of employees, and you have a huge business. even at that level, I feel like you still have components of that where you're like, I can do this better. But then if you step in, it totally just messes up the workflow of your team now.
Yep.
So now they're like, oh, I thought you did it. So I didn't have to. And now they missed it on another situation. And you thought, no, 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 that was a one-off case. But in their mind, you're going to be doing it from now on. Like it just creates more problems than solutions.
Yeah. There's this
Yeah.
podcast I used to listen to about sex called Sex with Emily. And one quote I always say that is super important that applies to like business and everything is communication is lubrication. And I really love that because it's funny. It's a funny way to remember that when you do something, you need to communicate it well. And it just makes everything so much smoother.
That's a hilariously profound way of putting it. Yeah.
It's awesome. What do you do to develop your team on a daily basis?
Oh yeah, that's important. The meeting cadence. Meetings. So we do for the marketing team, we do huddles every other day. And then for content, we meet once a week. And then my success coaching, assistant coaching side, we meet every 2 to 3 days and we talk like almost daily, depending on what they need. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, like as the team gets bigger, then you put people in charge. So you take your winners and make them the bosses of that department, right? But I think meeting with them is super important. Like just because you're texting your team, just because you're on Slack with your team, the culture doesn't get translated because at the end of the day, as the owner and the founder, you are the culture of the company. So like, what's the best way to communicate that? Well, it's impossible to communicate that in a text conversation, but it's a lot easier to communicate that on calls. And the more time they see you, the more they interact with you, the more they learn that okay, like this, and then they can transfer that to the next set of team members, right? So I think what I've found, especially in virtual businesses, is meeting with your people. And at scale, what I've seen is when you have like a director of coaching and he has like 15 coaches underneath. What I've seen is like weekly team calls, obviously, like probably more than one a week. And then also doing one-on-one calls every other week.
Yeah, there's definitely something different about actual face-to-face communication. Texting is just so easy, but it just doesn't get the point across most of the time.
100%. And the thing is like even if you own a brick and mortar and like your people are salespeople or they require a good set of skills to be able to be effective at that job, please take the time to meet them one on one, at least once a month or whatever you can do it. Because the more one on ones you do with those people, the least likely they are to leave your company. Because one of the things we always talk about like client acquisition and then client retention. But there's also an employee acquisition and there's also an employee retention. That means every employee you get, you also have to be a good boss that retains them. You know what I mean? And yeah, I think a really good example of that is one of my somebody on the marketing team. She was on this other coach's team before, and she was the top team member for 2.5 years for him. And then we just like happened to meet, and she was telling me her skills. She knew somebody in my company, and then they referred us, and we were talking, and she goes, "That person is just not very emotionally regulated. He yells at us, he does this, and I'm just wanting to leave." And her skill was really good. So when we brought her on, she's been with us for like 4 or 5 months now. And when we brought her on, she said, I was like, hey, like you left something that was pretty stable for 2.5 years, like you've been doing it, you're very comfortable to jump into this new thing. She goes, yeah, I really liked what you said on the interview, and that's what I really wanted to work with you. I was like, what was it? She goes, when you said you are fair, but you keep your people accountable. Fair but accountable.
That's
That
awesome.
that's the motto we use because that's how I wanted to be treated. I wanted to be fair, and it's yeah, I think that works super well in those settings.
I get where she's coming from because I worked for a few companies where my boss wasn't the greatest. And they kept like trying to use pay as a reason for me to stay. And I'm like, dude, I would rather work for half this amount for a boss that I get along with and that treats me fairly. Because
So
most people we just want to be treated like humans and be appreciated for the work that we do and have our ideas implemented or at least listened to.
human beings, man. I think it's Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said to them, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And throughout my life, I don't carry a lot of grudges. I just move on and I've forgiven almost everybody that ever like did anything to me. But I do remember the feelings that like out of like the thousands I worked with, the one or two people in the past have probably made me feel some kind of way because they weren't fair, right? They push you around, they don't treat you like a human being. And I think those are the people that I just no longer associate with. And I ask myself, like for my own self-awareness, I'm like, why do I associate with all of these people, but like those few I don't? And I'm like, well, like they just made me feel like shit. And they made unfair decisions that actually hurt me, whether it was compensation, like my performance was up there, but they didn't give me a raise, whether it was some unjust, like unfair decision they made against me. And I think those things, man, people don't forget. Like, if you do a lot of those things, you create a lot of enemies. People don't like,
Hmm.
and eventually, like, imagine being a boss, right? If you're a boss and you train your team well and everybody is expected to perform and they are performing, everybody's like the performance is good. But you decide to one day just fire Nick because you just don't like Nick, right? But everybody else on the team loves Nick. So now you fire Nick effective immediately. Now what happens is the rest of the team is also feeling very insecure and they're not going to do their best work either because now they're going to start looking for other jobs too because if they can get rid of Nick, they can get rid of anybody.
Yeah, now they just feel so disposable.
And I think that's what in the online world, like obviously people talk about like what is it, hire fast, fire fast, or hire slow, fire fast,
Yep.
right? That Gary Vee saying. It tends to like really burn bridges. And I don't think people think that through. And obviously there are times to terminate people. There's time to like let that go. And at times it's also good for them, right? The employee, let's say the employee is just not even, I've only like terminated people based on performance. And after like, and I've given them like second chances too. But I've never terminated somebody that I just didn't like. If I didn't like you, I would not hire you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, I think like that's an important thing because people will never forget how you made them feel. And it's you want to make sure that you're doing good with that. Because why create enemies when you don't have to?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's a lot more fun when people like you.
A lot more fun when people like you, and also it's a lot easier. Like business actually thrives when that's the case. And
Yeah,
like
def a
sometimes
lot less stress.
yeah, dude. And like, let's say you're on the team and like you share some idea, like I want to hear you out because like you perhaps might have a angle that I didn't even think of. Perhaps you have something that's like super good that saves us a lot of money, or that might make us a lot of money. That might be good for our clients, that improves our client experience, right? Like if you think that your ideas are the best as the leader, then you should check yourself because they might not be. And you want your team, like even our virtual assistants and my company feel very comfortable giving me ideas and telling me, hey, that's not working. Let's try this. And I wanted that. I've always wanted that. I've always been that team player in a team where I could share that with the leader, you know? But there's been once in my life where I give feedback to the leader and like that guy just had a lot of ego and he didn't take it properly. And I was like, all right, I won't do that again. But then I got to a point where I was good. I just left the job. I was like, this is not a culture I want to be part of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
So
awesome. You can create that culture for your employees because I know there's like so many businesses where the employees just fear if they speak up and give an idea that they can get fired for it. And it's just sad to see that.
it's a lot, bro. It sucks. In corporate America, even I remember one time I was working with a hospital in Biloxi, Mississippi. This pretty good hospital. We went there for some software optimization. They were using our software, and there was just a lot of room for growth, a lot of room for improvement. And I was working with one of their tech guys, and the CEO on my last day, the CEO wanted to meet me, and we're hanging out with the CEO of the hospital, this super like Ivy League guy and well dressed and everything. I was supposed to speak second, and the hospital's tech employee was supposed to speak first. We're in this conference room with the CEO, CMO, everybody. And he just painted a picture that was just very, very pleasant. Like nothing is broken, everything's under control. And I was just disappointed. I'm like, no, everything is broken. Like that's broken, this is broken. But he just painted a very clean picture because he was worried about his job. I wasn't worried because I didn't work for that CEO. I got up there and I told him like everything in the most technical, expertly way I could, right? I was like, hey, we're behind here, so that's why we're gonna do XYZ. We're behind on this, that's why we're gonna do X, Y, and Z. And it was just like a big compare and contrast between the technical guy's assessment, and I was technical too, but I was not part of the hospital. I was like an outside vendor company, right? But I remember that day, I was like, I'm a young 23. At that time, I was 23 years old. Now I'm 29. That was 6 years ago. I was 23-year-old, young, hyper ambitious, competent engineer. He was a 55-year-old engineer who was just like, who had been through the whole corporate lingo and political correctness and all this present the positive image. And I with his approach, nothing gets done. With my approach, things improved after 6 months. Like the hospital was back up to it. The CEO actually sent me a personal email. He was super happy. So at the end, my approach worked. But in that moment, I remember being disappointed at him or second guessing my own self. I'm like, he just told the CEO that nothing is wrong, but there's plenty of things that are wrong. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. All right. So yeah, man, it's tough. Like in a young company, it's easier to share your feedback and more CEOs are open to it. But like the higher up you go in like corporate settings, what you find is most people are just there to keep their job. They're careerists. They're there to retire from that job. They don't want to rub anybody the wrong way. So then as a result, nothing gets done. As a result, nothing gets improved. As a result, everybody's just taking salaries, but like no improvement. You're just hide underneath, like just be on the side. Don't, but then like nothing improves, which is
Yeah.
sad.
Sounds like the US government.
Very slow, very slow, right? Like the one thing US government did get right is tax collection. They're the world's best company at collecting taxes.
Super good at that.
Dude, I don't think there's another country or anybody that has figured that out better than the US government. They're
Which
just, yeah.
which is hilarious because it was like founded on trying to get away from like high taxation. And
Well,
now
they
we're
got,
back to it.
I mean, what is it, like 35% tax on like self-employed people? Like,
It's
it's crazy.
ridiculous.
It's like you don't even want to make more money. Like, why make, $10 when like, three and a half are gonna go to Uncle Sam for doing nothing.
Yeah, now people want people to tax like billionaires more. It's like these billionaires are the ones creating jobs. Like, what are you doing?
Like Jeff Bezos, like at Amazon, Amazon has 1.5 million employees. Like, do we want more Jeff Bezos or less? We actually want more. And
Yeah.
I'm sure people listening to this podcast, there's all those people that hate rich people. Rightfully so at times, probably, but I'm always like on the side, like, hey, if it creates more jobs, then like let's make sure that people are inspired by that story.
And
But the funny thing,
there's definitely more good than there is bad, but it's the bad ones that really stand out and make them look bad, like Purdue Pharma with Oxycontin. Like that just makes billionaires look terrible.
yeah. And also like I noticed like with politicians, there's this natural distaste for rich people. And I think even though all politicians are funded by rich people, on public, they show this distaste for rich people. We're gonna tax them higher, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. But then like I think that's just to appeal to their average voters.
Oh, 100%, because most of them are rich or millionaires themselves.
All of them, dude. Like I feel like all the ones we know of are very well off. But yeah, dude, this is fascinating.
It's crazy. The last question would be, what do you do to develop yourself? Because when you're creating a team, the best way to develop your team is to work on yourself first.
I read a lot and I also reflect a lot. I journal a lot. There are times when I look at my day and I'm like, how did I improve today? And at times that means process improvement in training with the Titans. At times that means me doing something I didn't want to do. Like right now I'm fasting, but I'm still doing calls all day, right? I could easy excuse like I'm fasting, I'm not doing any calls, I'm gonna sleep, right? But no. So I think what how I develop as a leader is I also go to conferences and I'm always like, it's hard to replicate what I do just because to really grow as a leader, you have to be semi-obsessed with it. You shouldn't like when you're at the gym, you should naturally want to listen to podcasts. When you're driving, you naturally want to listen to that. So it's hard to like give that to somebody in a book and be like, hey, copy this, right? You kind of have to like have this innate curiosity and obsession with it. Because if you have that, it'll be so much easier to develop on your own, like self-develop. Because
Yeah,
you'll just really be inclined to it. It's just, you know, yeah,
you have kind of have to be crazy. And it's not always bad to be crazy. It gets things the craziest things create great companies.
100%, Nick. Totally. But yeah, brother, really appreciate you. These were some really good questions. I don't have these conversations often, but the fact that I did today feels really good.
I really love it. And like I will go on any topic. I don't care. So I
Bye
really
bye.
appreciate it, man.